The first camera wasn't broken. It was just facing the wrong direction. I stopped on the slope and stared at it longer than I needed to. The matte green housing turned inward, lens fixed on a pine trunk barely a foot away instead of the narrow animal corridor it was meant to monitor. Trail cameras don't move on their own. At least, they're not supposed to. My name's Aaron Hale. I'm a technical specialist for the Forest Service, which mostly means hiking into remote sections of national forest to maintain equipment people never think about. Storms had rolled through earlier that week, knocking several cameras offline in a restricted grid about 9 miles beyond the public trails. Inspect, replace, recalibrate. Simple job. I stepped closer and circled the tree. The mounting strap was tight, battery strong, solar strip intact, no cracks in the casing. Nothing suggested damage. Yet the camera sat nearly 8 feet up, too high for someone to casually reach without a ladder, and there were no boot prints in the cold soil beneath it. Just smooth dirt and a scatter of old deer tracks. I pulled the unit down and checked the system log. Last manual access, 3:12 a.m. 2 nights ago. User ID? Mine. I frowned. I hadn't been out here in months. Assuming a sync error, I opened the footage anyway. Night vision washed the forest silver. Fog drifted between the trunks. 3:11. Stillness. Then, slowly, almost carefully, the frame began to turn. No animal entered view. No branch pressed against the housing. The camera simply rotated until the tree filled the screen. I replayed it twice, jaw tightening. Wind doesn't move something that precisely. A faint chill crept across my shoulders, though the morning air was calm. I remounted the camera, aligning it with the game trail and cinching the strap down hard. When I stepped back, it looked exactly as it should. Problem solved. Problem. As I turned to leave, the forest felt oddly muted. No birds, no insects, just the dry rattle of leaves shifting high above. 50 yards downslope, my satellite tablet chimed. Motion alert, camera 12. I opened the feed. Daylight, empty trail. Wrong angle, the lens was facing the tree again. I stared at the timestamp. 3:12 a.m. Tomorrow. And for the first time that morning, I had the distinct sense that something out there wasn't avoiding the cameras. It was controlling where they looked. The next camera sat nearly a mile deeper into the grid. By the time I reached it, the forest had changed. Not dramatically, nothing you could point at and name, but the woods felt tighter here. Sound didn't travel as far. Even my boots seemed quieter against the dirt, as if the ground were absorbing the noise. I spotted the camera 30 yards out and stopped walking. It was turned around too, mounted higher than the last one, at least 12 feet up the trunk. I approached slowly, scanning the surrounding trees out of habit. No broken branches, no drag marks, no sign anyone had hauled a ladder this far into restricted land. The soil told the same story as before. Deer tracks, a fox, maybe a week old. Nothing human. I tilted my head back. Okay. How? Black bears could climb, sure, but they don't rotate cameras with careful precision. Usually they just rip them off and chew on them until the batteries leak. This one was untouched. I lowered it and checked the footage. Early morning light. A pair of elk stepped cautiously through the detection zone, ears twitching. Halfway across the frame, both animals froze at the exact same moment. Not alert, not curious. Locked in place. Then they turned and walked back the way they'd come. I scrubbed backward. That's when I saw it. For a single frame, the background looked wrong. Darker somehow, like the depth between the trees had flattened into a solid wall of shadow. Then it snapped back to normal. I replayed it 3 more times, but the distortion was so brief it almost felt imagined. Probably a sensor glitch. Still, the elk knew something was there. Near the end of the timeline, the camera angle shifted, slow, controlled, until bark filled the screen. I exhaled through my nose and remounted it facing the corridor. As I tightened the strap, a breeze slipped through the canopy, the first real wind I'd felt all morning. It carried no bird song with it, no insects, just a long stretch of nothing. When I stepped away, I noticed something else that hadn't registered at first. Every direction looked empty. Forests aren't quiet, not completely. There was always movement somewhere. But standing there, 12 miles from the nearest paved road, I realized I hadn't heard a single animal in over an hour. My tablet vibrated. Another alert. Camera 14. Motion detected. I checked the map. That one was closer than it should have been, much closer. The detection timestamps formed a rough line across the grid. Camera 9, then 12, now 14. A boundary, and whatever was triggering them was moving along it. For the first time since taking the assignment, finishing the route stopped feeling routine. It started feeling like I was walking towards something that already knew exactly where I was. Camera 14 was exactly where the map said it would be, exactly where it had always been. Yet the moment I saw it, a pressure settled low in my chest. The quiet instinct that notices things before your brain catches up. This one wasn't turned around. Not yet. Still, I took my time approaching, eyes moving constantly through the trees. The deeper I pushed into the grid, the more the forest seemed thin of life. No birds overhead, no distant cracking branches. Even the wind had dropped away again, just my breathing and the soft creak of trunks shifting. I swapped the unit with a fresh camera from my pack, standard protocol whenever equipment starts behaving unpredictably. New batteries, reformatted storage, factory angle calibration. Eliminate the variables. When I finished, I triggered the motion sensor with a wave of my arm and watched the red indicator blink, working perfectly. Satisfied, I headed back toward the service path. I'd barely made it 50 yards when my satellite tablet chimed. Upload complete. Camera 14. I stopped walking. That was fast. Too fast. Trail cams usually batch upload when signal conditions are right, but this sector had always been spotty. Sometimes footage took hours to sync. Frowning, I opened the file. The timestamp made my stomach tighten. 5 days earlier. That's not possible, I muttered. I hadn't even been assigned this maintenance run 5 days ago. The video began playing. Daylight filled the frame. Same gray sky, same skeletal branches. Then movement entered from the left. Me. I stepped into view wearing my field jacket, but not the one I had on now. That was last season's gear, an older model I'd replaced after the zipper failed. In the footage, I walked directly to the tree and stopped. Didn't adjust the camera, didn't check the strap, just stood there, watching it. A cold prickle crawled up my arms. I didn't remember this. Didn't remember being anywhere near this sector. The version of me on screen wasn't moving naturally either. My posture looked wrong, too upright, shoulders stiff, and I wasn't blinking. Wind stirred the branches behind me. Needles trembled. My clothes didn't shift at all. I leaned closer to the tablet, pulse beginning to thud heavier in my ears. Okay, what am I looking at? Seconds dragged by. Then, slowly, mechanically, the Aaron in the footage lifted his head until he was staring directly into the lens. Not past it. Into it. My throat went dry. because I knew that angle. Trail cameras sit above eye level. To look straight into one, you have to know exactly where it is. The video ended without warning. No departure, no final movement, just a hard cut to empty forest. I lowered the tablet, suddenly aware of how exposed I was standing there. The trees stretched tall and thin in every direction, their shadows faint under the flat afternoon light. Without thinking, I turned back toward camera 14. It was still mounted where I'd left it, still aimed down the corridor. Yet as I stared at it, an uneasy realization settled into place. If that footage was real, then something had known I would be here, days before I arrived. The tablet chimed again. Another alert. Same camera, but I hadn't moved. Slowly, I looked up from the screen. The forest remained perfectly still. Then, somewhere off to my right, a branch bent. Not snapped. Bent, as if something tall had just brushed past it. I stopped walking and pulled up the grid map again. Camera 9, 12, 14. The triggers formed a curve through the forest, too clean to be coincidence. A boundary. Something inside was being contained, or something inside was controlling what could see it. The next camera confirmed the pattern, turned inward like the others, lens pressed toward the trunk. As I approached, my boot slid slightly in the dirt. I looked down. 4 grooves cut through the soil in straight parallel lines, each nearly an inch deep. They ran toward the tree and ended there. Not hooves, not paws, too precise. I crouched beside them, a quiet pressure building behind my ribs. It looked like finger marks, long ones. Only then did I notice the bark. Deep, vertical impressions scored the trunk nearly 10 feet up, far higher than I could reach without jumping. I remounted the camera quickly, aware now of how silent the forest had become. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed thin before it reached the ground. My tablet vibrated. Camera 7, motion detected. Then another, camera 8, camera 9. The alerts advanced across the grid in steady intervals, traveling. Whatever was triggering them wasn't wandering. It was moving with direction, toward the service cabin, toward me. A faint breeze stirred the canopy, raising a dry whisper overhead, but nothing else moved with it. No startled wings, no rustling retreat through brush. It felt like the forest had already emptied. Another alert flashed, closer this time. I looked up, scanning the trees, and a realization settled cold in my stomach. Every camera sat mounted at roughly the same height, eye level. My tablet chimed again. Camera 15, live feed. I opened it. Empty corridor, gray trunks. Then the camera lifted. Not bumped, not falling. Lifted smoothly, as if something had taken hold of it. The frame darkened while the lens tried to focus. For a fraction of a second, an uneven surface filled the screen, stretched tight over sharp angles. Then the feed died. A final alert appeared almost immediately. Camera 16, motion detected, less than 200 yards from the cabin. And whatever was walking that boundary was getting closer. I reached the service cabin just before dusk. The structure squatted against the tree line like it had grown there, weathered wood, single window, radio mast rising behind it. I'd stayed here dozens of times before. It was meant to feel routine. It didn't. I locked the door behind me and set my pack down, listening. The forest outside remained unnaturally still, as if the trees themselves were waiting for something to finish moving. The tablet vibrated on the table. Camera 16, live feed available. I hesitated, then opened it. The image resolved slowly. Empty ground, the edge of the corridor. No movement. Seconds passed. Then the camera tilted, not abruptly, carefully, as if whatever held it was adjusting for a better angle. The frame rose until the lens pointed straight ahead, not at the trail, but outward, toward where the other cameras would be, toward the perimeter. The chill crept up my arms. It wasn't just turning the cameras anymore, it was positioning them. The feed darkened as something moved closer, so near the lens that focus failed. Pixels smeared into shadow, then sharpened just enough to reveal texture. Not fur, not bark. Something stretched tight over angular contours, like skin pulled over the wrong frame. The audio channel crackled. I leaned closer without realizing it. A sound came through, long and steady. An inhale, close enough that it brushed the microphone. I snapped the tablet shut and stepped back from the table, heart hammering louder than I liked to admit. The cabin felt smaller now, walls pressing inward, the single window reflecting my own face back at me. Another vibration. Then another. Multiple alerts stacked at once. Cameras across the grid were triggering, not in sequence this time, but together. I opened the map. The perimeter hadn't shifted. It had tightened. Every active camera now faced inward, their detection cones overlapping in a crude circle. Whatever was out there wasn't trying to escape observation. It was shaping it. A faint thump sounded outside the cabin. Not a knock, more like the ground compressing under weight. I held my breath. Nothing followed. No footsteps, no scraping. Just silence settling back into place. The tablet vibrated again. One new alert. Camera 12, audio only. I swallowed and opened the file. At first, there was nothing but static. Then, buried beneath it, a faint sound emerged, soft, rhythmic, and unmistakably deliberate. Breathing. Not rushed, not strained. Patient, and closer than it should have been. I didn't sleep. Every small sound the cabin made, wood settling, metal ticking as the temperature dropped, snapped my attention back to the window. Nothing ever appeared out there, no shape crossing the clearing, no footsteps approaching the door, just that oppressive, waiting quiet. Near midnight, I forced myself to think like a technician again. Systems fail, data corrupts. There are explanations. I opened the tablet and tunneled into the camera network, past the active grid, past the maintenance logs, until I found a buried directory. Legacy sector. Do not service. No one had mentioned a legacy sector. Curiosity outweighed hesitation. I opened the files. The earliest footage dated back over a decade. Different technicians appeared in the clips, swapping batteries, adjusting angles, doing the same routine work I'd done that morning. Then the pattern began. Cameras turning overnight. Animals refusing to cross certain corridors. Long gaps in recordings with no drain on the batteries. My mouth went dry as I scrolled. Transfer requests followed almost every incident. Personnel reassigned. Contracts ended early. No explanations attached. One video near the bottom was flagged but never archived properly, just stamped with a date and left there. I opened it. Night vision washed the forest pale. A man stood beneath the camera, radio clipped to his chest. His voice came through in a whisper. If you're seeing this during maintenance, don't stay out after dark. He kept glancing into the trees behind him. The cameras aren't being moved from the outside. They're being turned so we don't see past a certain line. A faint cracking sound echoed somewhere off-screen. The man stiffened. If you ever find footage of yourself that you don't remember recording... He stopped talking. Behind him, something shifted between the trunks. At first, I thought it was a trick of depth, the way night vision flattens distance. Then it straightened. Higher. Higher still. The top of the frame cut it off before I could judge its full height, but it made the technician look small by comparison. He hadn't noticed yet. "If you see yourself before you arrive," he finished quietly, "leave. Don't finish the route. Just go." The forest seemed to fold inward as the shape took a single step forward. Not fast, not aggressive. Deliberate. The camera jolted sideways. Feed lost. I sat frozen, the glow of the screen painting the cabin walls gray. A soft chime broke the silence. Live feed, exterior cabin camera. I frowned. There wasn't supposed to be a camera on the cabin. Slowly, I opened the file. The image showed the clearing outside, from several yards back within the trees, centered perfectly on the door. Watching it. Watching me inside. Dawn couldn't come fast enough. The moment the sky began to pale, I packed the truck with shaking efficiency. Tablet, chargers, field kit, everything thrown into the passenger seat without its usual order. I wasn't finishing the route. Protocol could argue with me later. The engine turned over with a heavy growl that shattered the morning silence, and for the first time all night I felt something close to relief. Then the tablet chimed. One final upload. Automatically, my eyes dropped to the screen. Camera 12, new file, timestamp, 18 minutes ahead. My chest tightened. Hands unsteady, I opened it. The corridor lay empty under early gray light. Seconds crawled past. Then movement entered the frame. Me. I stepped into view from the tree line, walking slowly toward the camera, every muscle in my body locked. I was standing beside the truck. I hadn't moved. On screen, I stopped beneath the unit and lifted my face toward the lens. Even from that angle, I could see something was wrong with my posture. Too rigid. Like my joints didn't quite understand how they were meant to bend. My mouth opened. The audio crackled. "Still facing the wrong way," I said calmly. The voice was mine, but flattened, empty. Behind the version of me on the screen, the forest darkened as something unfolded upward between the trees. Not stepping into view. Rising. I slammed the tablet face down on the seat and climbed into the truck, gravel spitting as I accelerated onto the service road. Don't look back. Don't stop. Branches scraped faintly along the sides as the forest slid past mile after mile until the trees finally began to thin. Only then did I risk a glance in the rearview mirror. At first I saw nothing but the empty road. Then, far back near the bend, a line of trees shifted, too synchronized to be wind, and mounted along that stretch, barely visible in the distance, the cameras pivoted one by one, turning toward the road, following the truck, watching me leave. I reported equipment failure when I reached the ranger station, requested immediate reassignment. No one argued, just signed the transfer faster than paperwork usually moves. They never asked for details. Sometimes I wonder how long that perimeter has been there, and whether it's meant to keep something inside, or to make sure nothing sees what comes out. I took one last look at the tablet before turning it in. A new directory had appeared overnight. No timestamp, no label, just a single video waiting in the queue. I didn't open it, because I already knew what it would show. Another camera, another corridor, and eventually, me, walking into frame. If you've ever hiked deep enough into the wilderness, you know the feeling. That quiet moment when you realize the forest isn't just empty, It's listening. And maybe some places aren't meant to be observed. Maybe that's why the cameras kept turning. Maybe that's why the animals wouldn't cross, and maybe whatever was out there never wanted to be seen. So tell me, would you have finished the route or left the moment the cameras started watching back? If this story unsettled you, make sure to like the video. It helps more people find campfire horror stories. And if you enjoy slow burn horror set in remote places where something isn't quite right, hit subscribe. New stories are waiting for you every week. Drop a comment below and let me know. What do you think was inside the perimeter? Was it trapping something or protecting the rest of the forest from it? Until next time, stay out of the deep woods. And if you ever find a camera pointed the wrong way, don't turn it around.